All right, Shalom Aleichem, everybody, and welcome. It is a special, great honor that we have a Shiur Rav Shliach, who actually his expertise is in many fields, but it's specifically in one area that one of the classes over here just finished learning, the halachos of Neshek and Greatness of Shabbos Candles. So I figured if we to keep the tradition of the Kinas Torah tradition, I figured we should learn something. Here, Aaron Dukes has just waved your pamphlet, your booklet. So maybe instead of just choosing a random topic, we'll choose a topic that for many of us it's very fresh. So that's number one. Number two, it's obviously because it's Shabbos and Yontif, it's very, very davar be'itoi. But I'm sure Rabbi Dubov will elaborate that Chazal say that kol ha'osek b'Torah so'ila ki'ilu hikra v'oila. So today's days when Nebuch, the Israeli soldiers are using Neshek, and we, not too many of us are actually using the physical Neshek. What could we do? We could at least help them out by doing our part of the spiritual Neshek, and hopefully give them more success in what they do. Im atem madlikim neret shalida, the famous Chazal, Hashem guarantees if you bring one light to the world, the Eibishter will protect us with the Neret Shel Tzion. So that was the choice of that's the reason for the choice. Now let me give Rabbi Dubov first of all a big bruchim habayim, a big welcome, Rabbi Dubov. You remember you know the story in history where the Rebbe made a United Nations, picked a row from every So right now, obviously you're from London. We have on this group watching over here, we have people obviously from the United States. But I'm looking around, we have the Sabens, and Rabbi Dubov, he's doing it this time because by him, I think it's 11 o'clock at night. That's the latest he was able to deal with us. But Rabbi Dubov, there are people here who are even later. We have the Sabens are in France. We have Japan. We have Australia. We have Baruch Hashem from all over. So this is the Torah Dika United Nations. They all, instead of going to Luna Park and all those places, they decided they're going to learn something on Shabbat, on the Chol Hamoed. So Rabbi Dubov, again, Yashikayach, and please, if they hear me enough, they want to hear a frisher voice, please share with us the Yonim Ahim de Malaperik. Rabbi Nissen David Dubov, all the way from London, from England.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me properly? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi Wilhelm, for that beautiful, very English introduction. So I should say possibly good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, all simultaneously, depending on which time zone you are in. But Torah is l'mayla min hazman and l'mayla min hamakom, so we're not going to have that problem over here. I'd like to start off with a beautiful Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. In Kesser Shem Tov, there is a beautiful teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov said that the Tzaddik Hador is a Baal Teshuvah. The Tzaddik Hador is a Baal Teshuvah. Now, again, I don't know whom I'm addressing, but let me say for my part, the Tzaddik Hador for me was the Rebbe. And we know that the Rebbe was what we call a Benon Shel Kedoshim. His father was a Makubal, a Tzaddik. His mother was a Tzaddikus. What do we mean when we say that the Tzaddik Hador is a Baal Teshuvah? In the usual sense of the word, a returnee, somebody who has recently accepted Yiddishkeit. It doesn't make sense. So the Baal Shem Tov translates beautifully. And he says that the Tzaddik Hador is the Baal, the owner of Teshuvah in the generation. In other words, if you're looking for the keys to Teshuvah, how do you open the hearts, minds, and souls of the generation? You ask the Tzaddik Hador. Because the Tzaddik Hador is the Baal he is the owner of Teshuvah in the generation and has the keys for Teshuvah in that generation. Now, in Zohar, and it's brought in Igeres HaTeshuvah, that Teshuvah is Toshuv Hey, is the return of the Hey, the fractured Hey, the last Hey of the Shem Hashem, the Shekhinah, is Begolusa, and we need to return that Hey, which means we need to re-spiritualize and join the Shekhinah back with the Yud Kei Vav, V'haya Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz, when V'yom hahu yeh Hashem echad u'shmei echad. When Mashiach will come, the Shem again will be complete. So one could possibly therefore view all the Mivtzoim of the Rebbe, the mitzvah campaigns, as keys which open up the hearts and souls of that generation. One of the Mivtzoim, which is so clearly manifest that that is actually what happened, and now we have 50 years of looking back into history, this was Mivtza Neshek. It wasn't originally called Neshek, it was called Greatness of Shabbos Candles. The word Neshek, as you said in your introduction, was only coined by Chabad in Eretz Yisrael, and for obvious reasons, because it's a play on the word Neshek, meaning armaments and so on and so forth. But the fact is that when the Rebbe started in 1975 this Mivtza, it means that this year is in fact 50 years of the campaign, and that is why we need to reinvigorate with greater strength B'Yeser Seis or B'Yeser Ois the campaign. Now let me share with you an interesting story. It's well known that one of the greatest activists in Mivtza Neshek is a lady called Mrs. Esther Sternberg. She is the daughter of Rabbi Zalman Gurari. Erev Pesach, Tovshin Lamed Hey, Erev Pesach, Erev, in other words, Erev Bedikas Chametz, arguably one of the busiest days for a Balabasta. She was in an eatery, what they call, I think, in America. She was in like a restaurant or whatever it is in Crown Heights with the kids, giving them the last taste of chametz. One of Rabbi Label Groner Oliver Shalom, one of his sons, runs into the store and says that she should immediately go to 770. She doesn't know why. She ran over, and in the room before the Rebbe's room, which Hasidim call Gan Eden HaTachton, she finds Rabbi Hecht, J.J. Hecht, Rabbi Yankel Hecht. He was wearing a gartel. And she also finds Rabbi Yossel Weinberg, and also wearing a gartel. And then she also sees Rabbi David Raskin, and she's wondering, why are all three of them there, and why are they all wearing a gartel? And then Rabbi Klein, Rabbi Chadakov comes in with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe nods and says that all of them should go into the Rebbe's room. And then she realizes what is happening. Rabbi Hecht then had a radio program. So did Rabbi Weinberg. And Rabbi David Raskin was in charge of Tzach, Tziri Agudus Chabad in New York at the time. And the Rebbe said that really he should make what's called a lichtike Verbringen, meaning a lichtiken Sturm, a whole Sturm, because that year, Tovshin Lametei 1975, Pesach fell on Wednesday and Thursday night, immediately followed by Shabbos. And that means that women would be lighting Ner Shabbos Kodesh 3 nights in a row. The Rebbe said it would be halachically questionable to make a farbrengen that night, because it was the night of Bedikas Chametz, and consequently, there may be a chashash that people may not do Bedikas Chametz properly, and therefore he's giving over to these influential group a lichtike shturim. The Rebbe told them to take the Mivtza Neshek, which had in fact been launched in Elul of Toshin Lamed Dalet. In other words, just before Tishrei Toshin Lamed Hey, the Rebbe launched the campaign, which is why now we're literally in 50 years of the campaign. And he told them to really boost and invigorate and revitalize the campaign on the radio, in print, and with all sorts of various mediums, including, I think, that Erev Shabbos, there went around a plane with a banner saying the candle lighting time in New York. Why am I mentioning that particular story? Because Hashgacha Pratis, the 50th anniversary of Mivtza Neshek, falls on an Erev Yom Tov, which is 3 days. In other words, we're now going into Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, Shabbos Bereishis. Agav, my Rebbetzin, made a point this year of handing out to the ladies 3-day candles in the Chabad house. So that, obviously, when we encourage people to light on Shabbos, it should be done with a pre-existing flame. But the point which I'm bringing out over here is that of all days where there is such a tremendous emotional pull on every single Jew in the world, this coming Shmini Atzeres, which is the Yortzeit, literally, of the Kedoshim who were killed on that day, and so many people were Moshe Nefesh on that day. It's a day. In fact, in our Chabad house, we actually did we ran the JLI program in Israel, How Israel Wins, a beautiful program setting out the Rebbe Shita in Eretz Yisrael. We actually did it on Monday, October the 7th, because we didn't want it to clash with the Shmini Atzeres. But the fact is, the Yortzeit Kipshutai of October the 7th is Shmini Atzeres. And consequently, I think it behooves all of us to think and make some space for a few minutes to think that if the Rebbe could call Mrs. Sternbergen Erev Pesach, Erev Bedikas Chametz, and tell her to launch a massive campaign, it behooves all of us to give a think that now we have an extraordinary opportunity of reaching out to people, encouraging them to light Shabbos, Neret Shabbos Kodesh. And here the link is very straightforward. We're at a point at the moment where, as I don't need to tell you what's going on in the news, Eretz Yisrael is in the middle of a huge campaign, could possibly be striking Iran and so on and so forth. We're talking about miracles, which I think it must be said, the Rebbe said that when the miracle happened with Chizkiyahu HaMelech and Sancherib, Bikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu lases Chizkiyahu Mashiach, and the reason he didn't is because he didn't give enough Shevach V'Heidah on the tremendous miracles which happened then. I read an article from an aeronautical engineer that said that he works for Lockheed Martin. He said that Mele, if I say it was a miracle to bring down all the ballistic missiles with the interceptors, no. So Rabbi Dubov said, "Vos veister?" What does he know? But he designs these things, and he said to have a 98% success rate, this was a nes gomer. And consequently, we need to give a Shavach V'Heidah LaKadosh Baruch Hu for the Nisim, and we need to think of the tremendous Neshek, which we have in our hands, which you alluded to beforehand, but Al HaPoel Basi. I didn't just want to darshan here in Torah, which is a good thing, but Al HaPoel Basi, that we should all be misboining on the extraordinary opportunity that lies in the next 24 hours before Hadlokas Nedus of Shmini Atzeres, we should reach out, Kipshutai, to our friends, relatives, I'm sure everybody, Chaber Islay, and say to them, listen, this is not a regular Shmini Atzeres, this is a yortzeit of many, many people, Umgikumen al Kiddush Hashem, and consequently, this is an extraordinary moment to light the Neshek, and this should bring a tremendous Shalom Ba'olam. And they should bring the Neshek, which will be Menatseach, the Mulchama Keneged HaYetzer, Keneged HaOivim, and it should bring Mashiach in Shmarath and Neir shall see, and as you mentioned beforehand. So that is how I wanted to open the Kinnis Torah. Al Shel Poel Basi, it's a call, which is an extraordinary moment. And now I'll go into an inyan in Torah. It's fascinating also that we're speaking about Neshek on Sukkot. After all, this is Chol HaMoed Sukkot, and l'chayra, what's the connection between Neder Shabbos Candles and Sukkot? I can understand that we said tomorrow night, Yom Tov is going to be, and not tomorrow night, Wednesday night is going to be, and that's when we have to light the candles. But l'chayra, is there any further connection? And the truth is, there's a very deep connection. We say in davening, Ufrois Aleinu Sukas Shloimecha. On Friday night, we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to spread the Sukas Shloimecha. There's a certain sukkah of Shalom. What does that mean? There's a very beautiful mimer of the Rebbe, where he explains the following, and I'll dovetail and I'll bring this together with the concept of Neshek. The Rebbe says like this: the wow and the experience of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is very awesome. That's why we call them Yomim Noiroim. But they can be and remain makif, peripheral, not necessarily integrated within our psyche, within our hearts and our souls. And it says in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe that although most Jews, I would say, take the Arba Minim for the first time in Shul, just before Hallel on the first day, nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe writes, Mitzvah min amuvcher, to take the Arba Minim in the Sukkah. And that is why the Minhag Chabad is that on the first day, even before davening, it is to take the Arba Minim in the Sukkah, and to shake the Arba Minim even before davening in the Sukkah. And there are those who also make Imazonas, make a Leshe Basukkah then, and then they go to daven. What is the point of doing that? So it's brought in Pri Yetz Chaim that the inyan is Hamshachas Hamakif B'Pnimius. And what that means is that the Sukkah, which represents the Anan HaKatoros of Yom HaKippurim, and as we know, the word Sechach is Samach Chav Chav. Samach is 60 Tkiyas, Chav 20 Shvarim, Chav 20 Truas, Mea Koilos, which we blow on Rosh Hashanah. These are all contained in the Schach, meaning that the experience of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, however awesome and wow it was, it can remain makif. As the Gemara said, Ganva apum machtarta rachmona karya, that sometimes a ganaf in the moment of stealing will ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for help. And the question is obvious. If he believes in Hashem, why is he stealing? And if he doesn't believe in Hashem, why is he asking Hashem to help him? And the answer is simple. He believes in Hashem, but that belief remains peripheral, it's makif, and it didn't reach his thieving hands. And consequently, like the Medrash says, the lulav represents the spine, the hadassim, the eyes, the esrog, the heart, the aravis, the lips. Says the Arizal, when we shake the lulav and esrog in the sukkah, the idea is to be mamshich, to bring down the makif, the experience of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, in a pnimius, into our inner limbs. Or in the words of Kabbalah, it says in Kabbalah that we need to be mamshech das in chazah dezah. And thereafter, on Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, we bring that even further down to the Ekev Shevaregel by dancing. Now, when we do that, we actually make peace between the Nefesh HaBahamis and the Nefesh HaLekis, so that instead of struggling and striving with each other, they ride in tandem. And consequently, the Sukkah is called Sukkah Shleimecha, because the Sukkah brings inner harmony and peace, because it brings the experience of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur into a pnimius, so that the Hamelach experience of Rosh Hashanah and the Shema Yisrael Mesiras Nefesh of Yom Kippur is internalized in the Sukkah, even in the mundane activity of eating and drinking in the Sukkah. Now, if I was to ask you, because you've learned Reish Samach Gimel, and here I'm talking to people who are learning Smicha, if I was to ask you, what is the reason for Hadlakas HaNeiros? So the answer is, there are three reasons. One is Oineg Shabbos, the other is Kavod Shabbos, but one of the principal reasons is Shalom Bayis. Shelo yikoshel be'etzu be'even. Because like the Tzdukim, if they said that they would sit in darkness on Shabbos. And so Chazal said, no, we davka have to have a flame. Why? Because that enhances the atmosphere so that we won't stumble. By the way, in a beautiful Sicha, the Rebbe brings about this concept of Shalai Yikoshel Be'etzu Be'even, and explains that there are spiritual stumbling blocks and confusions in the world. And it's Davka, the Neder Shabbos Kodesh, that illuminate them. Why? So, in Chassidus it's explained that in truth, Einoid Mulvadoi, in truth, if we were able to see a Lukus, godliness, we would see the world as a godly place. But the Helen, the concealment of the world, conceals that Elokus. Which one mitzvah illuminates it? Shelo yikoshel, that we shouldn't stumble in that Eitz and Even, in those stumbling blocks. It is the Neder Shabbos Kodesh, because physically they emit light, and consequently, spiritually, that mitzvah specifically is the one that brings Shalom Bayis. Just by the way, the Goin, the Vilna Goin, says in his Pirush, in Chumash, that Eitz and Even refers to the Eitz, refers to Nazarus, and Even refers to Islam, because Even is the stone of Mecca, and the Eitz is the cross. Shalai Yikoshel be'etzu be'even, shouldn't get we shouldn't get deterred or confused by other religions and so on and so forth. There is a beautiful chinuch, by the way, which everybody should know. The Sefer HaChinuch asks an obvious question. In the Parsha of Yisro, it says, Zocher es Yom HaShabbos l'kadshay. Why? Because we need to remember that Hashem created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. But if you have a look in Parshas Va'eschanan, it says, Shomer es Yom HaShabbos l'kadshay. Why? Because you need to remember that we were avodim in Mitzrayim, and Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. So l'chayra, which one is it? Is the keeping of Shabbos because we need to remember there's a boirei? Or is it the other reason, because we need to remember that we were avodim and Hashem took us out? So the Chinuch explains beautifully, and he says there are two concepts in Shabbos. One is called the Boirei, and the other is the Manhig. Shabbos tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Boirei, the creator, but then goes on and tells us, but he's also the Manhig. Not only does he create the world, but he's Manhig the world. And so consequently, the physical mitzvah that illuminates the world, so that Shalei Yikoshel Be'etzu Be'even, is the mitzvah of Neret Shabbos Kodesh. So if you put the two of them together, that explains B'Hashgacha Pratis the link. Why are we talking about Neret Shabbos Kodesh on Sukkot? Because the whole concept of the Sukkah is to bring Shalom. That's inner peace and harmony between the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Bahamis. And by the way, by extension, to the world as well, which is why we are Makriv Shivim Parim, 70 bulls on Sukkot in a decreasing manner, because this Shalom, which is brought inside of us, bringing us to our understanding of the V'niflinu, of what our purpose is, actually is reflected in the world as well. Because when Yidden understand what their role is, that is reflected in the world. This is the meaning of the pasuk Halalu es Hashem kol goyim shabchu kol ha'umim ki gover aleinu chastoi. There is no connection between the reason ki gover aleinu chastoi with the first part of the Halalu es Hashem kol goyim. Why do all the goyim praise Hashem? Ki gover aleinu chastoi. That's not a reason for them to praise Hashem. So the answer is, when they see Hashem's chesed with us, which is when we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, that has a tremendous effect on them. And that is why on Shalma Parim Svasenu, by mentioning the bulls in a decreasing poiches v'hoilach manner, we actually cause shalom ba'olam as well. So if we think of all of that in terms of, if I sort of summarize and take a needle and a thread and draw all the points together, here we are standing in a most unusual time, just before Shmini Atzeres, which is, as I mentioned before, and spiritually and emotionally, a pull on all of our hearts. There is a unique opportunity to remind people to light the Shabbos candles 3 days in a row, men and women. There is an element of shalom, which is brought out by Hadlokas Haneros, and that is exactly the same theme as Sukkot. Sukkot, by its effect on the Umas Ha'olam, by the Shivim Parim being Poiches V'Hoilach, they themselves come to the recognition that ultimately would lead them to V'hoyu Amlochem Meimnayich V'Soreisei Menike Yisayach, as it says in Yeshaya, that they will come to the understanding that B'Shvil Yisrael or B'Shvil HaTorah Nivra Ha'olam. And that's what Chazal said, Shekol HaTorah Kula Nitna Lasa Shalom Ba'olam. So it comes out that when you have the Sukkah Shleimecha, and when you have the Shalei Yikoshel Be'etzav and the Shalom Bayis of the Neshek becomes the greatest weapon, the secret weapon, but not so secret. It's a very public weapon in the sense that it Pasha gives out Ki Ne'er Mitzvah V'Torah. Let us now go a little bit deeper into the inyan of Hadlokas Haneros itself. I'm not sure, I don't know whom the levels of people I'm addressing over here and their knowledge in Chassidus, but I'll try and make it a davar hashover l'chol nefesh, something which is equal for everybody. We know that on Friday night we sing Shalom Aleichem and Eishes Chayil. Eishes Chayil is because there is a mitzvah of Hakoras HaToiv, And usually the Balabosta has worked hard to prepare for Shabbos, and consequently we give her kudos, we give her thanks and appreciation by singing to her Eishes Chai. However, there is also a cosmic element over here, and that is that the pool of Neshamas Yisrael is called Knesset Yisrael. Collectively, it's called the Shekhinah, because the Neshamas Yisrael are Shoichin u'Meslabesh ba'olam. I think the best physical example of which I ever saw this in my own life was a number of times I've flown into Eretz Yisrael by night. And it's very beautiful when you're coming in across the Mediterranean and you see the night line of the coastline of Eretz Yisrael, and thousands of points of light. And, you know, sometimes I think each one of these lights is a neshama, and each one of these neshamas is lighting up a certain place. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is meichim mitzadei gover, and your neshama is in a certain time and place specifically for you to illuminate. So that collective soul is called Knesset Yisrael, also called the Shechina, also referred to as the Sphira of Malchus of Atzilus. And the Sphira of Malchus of Atzilus is a feminine Sphira. And during the week, it says that the Sphiras HaMalchus is Yoyered Lebiyah. It goes down into the worlds of Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. And the purpose of that descent is Levarer Birurim, which means, in simple sense, that the pool of souls, each neshama, goes down into its Oilam Shana and Nefesh, as it says, V'Har Sinai Oshan Kuloi, that Har Sinai was smoking. Oshan is Rosh Hashanah's Olam Shana Nefesh. Each one of us is a unique coordinate of soul, time, and space. And it comes down into a specific coordinate in order to take Nitzutze Kedusha, which have been given specifically to that neshama to elevate, and it is mila them. It raises them. And through the Sulam Atfila, it raises them up back into, ultimately, through the Malachim, into the world of Atzilus. So this is what we call the Aliyah Ha'olamus. And who initiates that Aliyah? It is the Akeres Habayis. Now we know in Halacha that both men and women are obligated in Hadlokas HaNeros. Nevertheless, it became one of the three mitzvahs which women emphasize, Chana, Nidan, Hadlokas HaNer, and they specifically are the ones that usher in this Aliyah, which is why we sing Eishes Chayil, because this is an Aleph-based praise of the Sphira of Malchus as it's experiencing its Aliyah into the world of Atzilus. Now let's have a look a little closer how that's done. She takes a candle. What is a candle? A candle is made of wax and wick and a flame. The flame itself has two components. There is the blue fire in the flame, and there's the yellow or white, depending on what the candle, what the wax is, or what the fuel is made of. In Zohar, these are called Nahoira Uchma, the dark flame, the dark light, and sometimes it's called Nahoira Tichla. And then you have the Nahoira Chivra, the white flame, or the white fire. Let me just go off for a moment into tichla, tchelas. Ureisa moisoi uzachartem as kol mitzvos Hashem. What should you see? You see the tchelas. Says the Gemara in Menachos, what do you see in the tchelas? Tchelas doima liyom. The yom is doima lekisei hakavod. So by looking at the tchelas, it reminds a person of the kisei hakavod. And consequently, that infuses a person with yiras shamayim. And therefore, says the Zohar, it is ochil v'shotzi. That's an expression from the Zohar. What does ochil v'shotzi mean? It has the ability to eat and destroy the chitzonim, the forces of klipa. We don't have techeles today. Some people have tchelas, they time it is tchelas, but the majority don't wear tchelas today. And the explanation is that today even the white can achieve what the tchelas used to achieve. Kimavur in a different place. However, the inyan of tchelas is tichla, which means destruction. Now, if we think what's going on in a flame, what happens is that the fire burns the fuel and it draws it through the wick. And there's a lot of oxygen at the blue part of the flame, which is why it's blue. And then, because of the lack of oxygen in the higher parts of the flame, it becomes white or yellow. And the reason why it looks like a pear drop is because of gravity. Because gravity pulls down the flame, and so consequently it looks like a pear drop. But if you have a flamethrower, or if you have a torch, a blowtorch, you'll only see that blue flame, because there is so much oxygen available over there. You don't see the other, but in the candle you do. Bechlal, the Akeres Habayis, her job is to take the world, which is the material nature of the world, and to be maila it, and to elevate it, creating out of it hineir mitzvah v'Torah oir. Now it's interesting, in that pasuk, mitzvah is equated with the neir, and Torah with the oir. So one could possibly say that neir is the nohira uchma, is the blue flame, and chivra is Torah, oir. And the reason for that is because although the blue flame is actually hotter than the white flame, nevertheless, its purpose is to burn up. Whereas the purpose of the white flame is to illuminate. And the flame has two purposes. Number one, to burn up the chitzonim and to take the world and its geshem, its material aspect, not the physical aspect, but the material aspect of it, and to elevate it, which is why there's a major difference between eating during the week and eating on Shabbos. On Shabbos, it says there is a mitzvah of Oneg Shabbos. And it says in Shulchan Aruch, one should have many macholim, tovim, umesukim. There's Oneg Shabbos, Shabbos Esem Cholent. Why? Because then the whole idea of the eating is not the birure hanitzutzas of it, but it is the Oneg Shabbos element of it. So the transformation and the burning up and the elevation is done principally by the Akeres Habayis. And that is why we sing Eishes Chayil, because it's the Aliyah of Sfiras HaMalchus, which is going and it's pulling up the Geshem and the Chomer of this world, ushering in a moment of Shabbos Candles. Now, if you think about its other meaning, Neshek, as we said beforehand, means weaponry. That is exactly what weaponry is. Weaponry destroys. It doesn't build. And on one level, there needs to be the destruction of the material aspect, but for what purpose? In order to create an illumination. The Gemara says, "Harogil b'neir havin leibonin talmidei chachamim." It's a very interesting expression, harogil b'neir. I'm not a baki b'shas, but I'm not sure how many other places in Shas it says such an expression, somebody who's a rogil in somebody. After Rabbi Wilhelm would be able to tell me. Harogil, somebody who's rogil in this. So Rashi says it means in the Neir of Shabbos and the Neir of Hanukkah. Shenemar ki Neir mitzvah b'Torah oir. Since it says Neir Hashem nishmas Adam, so consequently, when a person lights a Shabbos candle, that will bring them the mazel, that the mazel will shine, so that it will bring them to Torah oir. In fact, it's interesting, on a number of occasions, when people would write in a report to the Rebbe about how they had been active in Mivtza Neshek, the Rebbe would answer, Yoer Mazolam, that this makes their mazel shine. Now, from what I understand, the mazel is a reference to the higher levels of the soul, which is the higher levels of the soul is called mazel because it comes from the word noizel. Noizel means to flow down. In fact, what we want is that the higher levels of the soul should flow down and should influence the lower levels of the soul, which are inside the body. In fact, the whole idea of kores is that the higher levels of the soul are cut off from the lower levels of the soul, and that a person is not spiritualized by their inner dimension. And when a person, Yoer Mazolai, means the higher level, apart from the mazel of the constellation in the sky, it also means Yoer Mazolai, that the deeper levels of a person's neshama itself, which is alikus, should shine within their body. So, the Rebbe said there's a tremendous amount of confusion and darkness in the world. Who can think of that? I mean, we've all lived through, through various different times. But I can only speak, for example, as a Jew now living in London. What a confusion there is, certainly here, on the streets, when we hear, we got like on Shabbos, 300,000 people marching in London, screaming from Free Palestine, from the river to the sea, and so on and so forth. There's such a bilbul amoichin. There's such a confusion. This is exactly the moment that we need to create more light when the world has gone mad. In fact, the Rebbe once used this phrase. He says, there are so many people going around and saying what's going to be, was wird sein tomorrow, and so on and so forth. I once heard a beautiful little story. It's a very nice story. In the 50s, Crown Heights was not an Orthodox place in the 50s. There were a lot of Jews there, but not necessarily Shomer Shabbos. So the Rebbe was once walking from 770 to go to visit his mother, and he passed by a Jew who was sitting on Yom Tov, first day Sukkot, and he was sitting in a coffee shop reading a newspaper. So when the Rebbe passed by him, he said to the Yid, "A good Yom Tov." So the Yid said, "A good Yom Tov." The Rebbe said, "What's happening?" He's reading a newspaper. So he said, "Der Welt schakelt sich." He was in the 50s. I don't know what was going on there, possibly, the war. And he said, the world's shaking. So the Rebbe said to him, Hast du Heinz geschockt lulav and esrog? Did you shake the lulav and esrog today? So the guy said, no. So the Rebbe said, Es du schockeln the lulav and esrog, es du zurück schockeln the Welt noten Platz. He said, if you would shake the lulav and esrog, you shake the world back into place. The world's shaking, but you want to put it back into place, then you should shake the lulav and esrog. What does that mean? It's the same idea as Neshek. If we want to create clarity, we want to be Meir Elokus in the world, not just the physical stone and wood, but the tremendous bilbul and tremendous confusion which is going on in the world. This happens when Klal Yisrael, which is the Isha, the wife of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the cosmic wife of Hashem, takes the candles. The candles represent our collective resource, and we create a Nehora Uchma. We create, first of all, a blue flame, which burns up all the unnecessary and unwanted elements, which is called in Kabbalah the Chitzonim, and we mile them, we create Torah Or. We create such a Torah Or that Or brings an Oineg Shabbos, it's a Kavod Shabbos, and it brings a Sukkah Shleimecha. It brings a tremendous Sukkah, a tremendous feeling. As we all know, Shabbos is that step out of creation into the Creator, into that island of serenity which we call Shabbos. So, just to summarize and to finish off, again, I would like to say that as a moment of action, each one of us should take to heart the power of tonight, tomorrow night is Shana Rabbah, and we should make a cheshbon nefesh, each one of us, 50 years of Mivtza Neshek. Rabbi Willem called this, reinforcing Neshek. I think the Americans just delivered THAAD missiles to Israel. Yes, so you just got reinforced. So if we're getting physical Neshek, then for sure we should reinforce our spiritual Neshek. And we should remember that the Tzaddik Hador is a Baal Teshuvah. We've been given the keys. And the greatest thing that you can do with the key is to use it, to open the door, to open the heart of another person. And it's fascinating, who would have thought in 67 that's going out and putting a tefillin on them, somebody in the middle of the street, that would open up, but you were given the key by the Tzaddik Hador. He's the Baal Teshuvah, he's the owner of Teshuvah in the generation. And he said, you know what? Lighting that one candle can have that tremendous, powerful effect. And today, we don't need any proof of that. We see, as they say in England, the proof is in the pudding. We see it, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Jewish women have returned to observance because of that one or two candles. I just also want to make a halachic point, because I know Rabbi Willem said that this is, principally a halachic form, although I've spoken mainly Hasidus tonight. But I run a girls' camp in England. One of my hats is to run the overnight Gan Yisrael girls' camp. And B'li Ein Hara, we've got over, 150 people, girls there. And I stand on Friday night and I watch them all bench lift. And it's a chinuch. But I cannot tell you how many girls, even after they've been told once and twice and so on and so forth, don't bench lift properly. They just need reminding, that's all. So I stand there and I remind them. The same thing is, by the way, for Natilas Yadayim, and the same thing is for Hamotzi. 3 simple things which are not done properly unless we give a chinuch. So one of the main things is, in Shulchan Aruch it says, that after the candle has been lit, we're Makabel Shabbos already, and one cannot extinguish the match. I've seen so many girls light it and then go like that. They need to be mechunach to put it down. And in order to do that, it's on the man of the house, as it says in Shulchan Aruch, to prepare the candles. But I'm making a small suggestion that the men should also make a special place, a plate, a metal plate or a tray or some place where they can easily put the match down. Because if they're worried where to put it down, they will extinguish it. That is one small ha'ara which I wanted to make. Apart from the fact that the pushka, needs to be put aside and the matches should be put aside. But this inyan. A second inyan is that women should know the halacha, especially balabostas, that once they have benched licht, they may verbally instruct the men who have not yet accepted Shabbos to do malacha. However, men must accept Shabbos at least a few minutes before the Shkia, because there is a din of Tosfos Shabbos, which means that there need to be moisef from the chol. They need to bring in Shabbos at least a few minutes. Now, the reason we have a buffer zone of 15 or 18 or 23 minutes, depending on which place you are and your minhag, the reason we have that buffer zone is because not all the women can get it exactly on time, and some are late, and minhag, I'm sure it happens in all our homes, right? And so we have that buffer zone. But if the light has been left on or whatever in a bedroom, then she may verbally instruct a son or a husband to do that, as long as it's still a few minutes before the Shkia. That is another very important halacha, and another interesting halacha is what happens if it is a kvias like this kvias, where you have Wednesday night, Thursday nights, and Friday night, and let's say she lights a 3-day candle on Wednesday before Hadlaka Saneris, in order to light the candles on Thursday night from a pre-existing flame, and Wednesday by day, something happens and it goes out. So there's no flame in the house. What can she do? Can one instruct a goy to come and light the flame? Okay. So in general, we have the din of Amir al-Nachri, that you're not allowed to ask a goy to do what you're not allowed to do. So I'll give that over to Rabbi Willem to paskin the shaila. You can tell lechacham v'yachkam oid as to what we should. I know what I do. I'd ask a goy to come and and light the flame, and have some benefit from it himself. Whatever. We actually. We're Baruch Hashem, we live in a place where there's a lot of goyim. So our next door neighbor is quite malumed in being a Shabbos goy. So it's not such an issue. But that's an interesting shaila which can obviously come up. Of course I realize I'm speaking to some people who are in Eretz Yisrael. So you're just going to bench licht on Wednesday night, and already Thursday night will be Friday. It won't be Oisiyanta. But if you're in Chul, then you could have this issue. So let me wish everybody a good Moed and a good Yontif. And as Rabbi Willem opened up Im Shmaratem Neir shall see, if, as it says in Tikkun Zohar, when a woman lights the candles on Friday night, it's as if she is lighting the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. And just like the windows in the Beis Hamikdash were shkufim atumim, they opened, unlike the castles in England, which have a narrow slot on the outside and a shelf on the inside, which the archer can rest his bow on in order to shoot out. In the Beis Hamikdash, it was punkt faket. The narrow slot was on the inside, and the window opened outside in order that the light should diffuse to the whole world. And what we need to know, that even though a kleina meidela, even though a small girl lights a single candle in a house, and the light is only just in that room, that is true physically. But spiritually, that light which she lights has a tremendous impact on the world. And further, and we should never underestimate the tremendous spiritual impact which our mitzvahs have. And certainly when it's coming to this Shmini Atzeres, which I mentioned beforehand, it's a tremendous, there was such darkness and pain on that day, it behooves that the reaction to it should be such joy and tremendous light. So on that note, have a beautiful Yom Tov. And we should be
Yeshikayach, Rabbi Dubov. Hold on, before we open it up for some questions, Yeshikayach, Rabbi Dubov, thank you very, very much. I know it's late at night by you. I don't know what the weather is over there. A lot of us had some, I'm actually in a very hot place, but a lot of people had the sukkahs blown. Look at Japan. Moshe Chaim has a sukkah. He sent me pictures that it was blown off from his place. Anyways, I want to say a couple of comments. Rabbi, for those who just finished learning Hilchos Adlakas Neiros, Rabbi Dubov mentioned that he's in charge of a girls' camp. You remember we spoke about the fact, how is it possible, the Alter Rebbe discusses that once you have already light in the house, why could you have a convention with 300 or 500 women lighting Shabbos candles? The third is already a light with the first or second candle, and we have enough to fulfill the mitzvah. And there is no shaloi kashal beit shabav. And why is it that the more the merrier, the more the better, and everybody can make a bracha? That's just for we spoke about that. But then I think I saw something very interesting. I don't think I ever chapped it till now. I saw somebody writing about Yom Tif Sukkos, benching the licht on Sukkos. So you know, tomorrow, for example, or the first days of Sukkos, you bench the licht, and it's preferable to, if you do it, to bench it in the sukkah. But what typically happens? You bench the licht in the sukkah. The men go to shul. The women go to the kitchen. The woman and the licht is being lit for 2 minutes, and nobody's benefiting from the licht while it's being used, while it was after it's being lit. So actually, the Nittig of Real, I don't know where he took this. I forgot. He says the woman should not light the licht in the sukkah right in the beginning of the lichtin time. And sukkahs, she should light when the husband comes home from shul. That's when you ever heard that, Chap? I mean, so because then everybody's sitting down to eat. There's going to be usage for the adlakas and neiros. There will be.
We have long candles anyway. So
yeah, but you're going to light the chatchila and not have any benefit from it. Light the time when okay, you have a good comment. Number one. Number two. I think somebody mentioned that it says in your book that when mothers and daughters are lighting Shabbos candles, like our minig is, who is Aaron? Did you mention that it says, or he brings a letter from the Rebbe that preferably one should light? There's an Indian specifically, one should light before another.
The girl should light before the mother.
What's the reason for that? In
order the mother should assist the girl.
Is that the reason? Or
yeah.
I thought of halachic svara, because al pi halacha, the mother is the ikar mitzvah. So who said it's because the extra candles are already extra? The mitzvah is already done. It's much easier if she lights first and makes a bracha, because if the mother did it, the mitzvah is done already. I mean, it could be a svara like that.
I tell you, there was Rabbi Willem. There was one more Indian. I didn't write all this down because it was Chol Hamoed, but there was another Indian I wanted to be mayor, and that is the Indian of davening mincha for the girls before Hadlakas HaNeiros. So here the question is it preferable to light and not daven mincha? The Alter Rebbe paskins in Siman Kuf Vav, v'chein ikar, that women are obligated to daven shacharis and mincha. Is it preferable to miss mincha and to light on time, even though you've still got 18 minutes till the shkia? Or is it permissible, preferable to make a t'nai? Now a t'nai, the Alter Rebbe writes in Kuntzes Achim that you have a 10-minute slot, but it should only be done with the evet. So the question is, should they make a t'nai or should they miss mincha? This is kamat every single Shabbos, I would say, in a lot of homes. This is a big dilemma. So one of the ways, to avoid it is, if you have girls at home, to tell them much earlier in the day to daven mincha. Tell them.
You could tell that you're an Englishman. Everything's Masuder. Us Americans, we don't have Seder, and we don't have everything is last minute.
No, so what would you say then? What would be better? Should they not daven mincha, or should they light with a t'nai? Because to daven after hadlakas haneres they can't, because they're mekabel Shabbos already. So what would you say?
So
that's why I'm suggesting, in all these things, it's better to give an eitzah. It's better to give an eitzah beforehand. It's like taking a shower. Everybody waits till the last minute. Why? Minig Yisrael. Don't wait till the last minute and be a Masuda.
Okay, I know a lot of people. Reb Isaac from Australia. You want to ask something? I saw you were writing notes. If you're writing notes, I'm going to get a shiur from him written up after Yontif about everything you said and how he could say it different. No? Simcha, I saw you were... Yeah, okay, Isaac, go.
You said you brought from the Nita Gavriel that the woman should light later, correct?
Correct.
In that case, she shouldn't make a shechayonu. She should be yotze with the shechayonu of the husband in Kiddush.
You're asking or you're saying?
I'm saying, and that's how many poskim.
No, but she'll light before the meal.
She lights just samuch to Kiddush. In fact, that's what my wife does, and I tell her to light late on Yom Tov so that she's not yotze with a shechion at the time that she lights her candles.
What's the benefit of that? What's the benefit? Why can't she make her shechion?
Because she can make her shechionu, but you said that she should light her candles closer to.
So at least there's some benefit from the candle lighting because she's doing it.
Yeah, but the benefit from the candle lighting doesn't exist because everyone's using electricity anyway. So it's already a different thing. It's not a simple thing.
The Ika today is the Oinig Shabbos element of it. It's not Shalei Koshel Beitz Be'evan.
Correct.
If you have to look, Rabbi Levine has a beautiful kuntras, which I make reference to. And he brings out over there, the Alter Rebbe is the Ika today is Mitzad Oinig Shabbos. Of course, it says, Hans says, you light candles in the sukkah, it's gorgeous, right? It's Shabbos Reden. No, boss, I don't know. I don't have that problem because we use long candles or Neranim, which go for at least 4 hours. So why do you have that problem?
Okay, Simcha, you were typing some stuff. Simcha, what's on your mind? Anybody have any questions? We have the man with all the answers.
I do.
Simcha, speak up.
So,
we don't hear you.
Regarding the candles, that's what we do is that my wife lights like prior to the meal, but not at match for a Yom Tov or Shabbos. She light before Shabbos, but before the meal.
I don't hear you. Rabbi Dubov, you hear him?
No.
Simcha, we can't hear you. Simcha, how many times did I tell you there's a Yiddish expression, a Schuster Gate Barvis? A Schuster Gate Barvis means the shoemaker usually goes barefoot. You are the big electrician, and by your internet is always the schwachest.
What, do you hear me now?
Now it's better, yeah.
Okay, it was my mic was turned down. So, regarding Yom Tov, my wife lights right before the meal, and she says Shechianu, which that's our condition. And then later on Shabbos, she would be lighting before Shabbos, obviously. So I wanted to ask a question. Okay, we were talking a lot about shaking up the world and changing the world, but we have this idea, we're learning in class with Rabbi Wilhelm all about Edom, and that it's traditional, that it's a commandment that we should not associate with a Russian, right? Stay away from a Russia, don't have a Russia from a neighbor, don't go to, some people don't go to community dinners because they're afraid that there's Rishayim there. What I mean by that is people who are not from, and maybe not be doing the best business practices. So what is the mechanism that Chabad is like, basically having everybody come to their house, they're seeing everybody, they're putting filling on people, doing everything with people, getting very close to, as Rabbi Willem says, when the Kohen comes up, he's not supposed to ask, did you say 3 prakim of Rambam or anything? Did you drive to shul? You just give them a blessing. So what is the mechanism, Rabbi, that we use as Chabad to allow...
Simcha, what does this have to do to candle lighting? You're doing the bullseye, the general question. What does that have to do?
Well, because it has to do with shaking up the world. That I wrote on this whole thing that I think that there's so many Baal Tshuvas today that just by the presence of them showing up, all of a sudden, where are they coming from now? There's all of a sudden the world's filled with Baal Tshuvas, that we're at this point where the Rebbe wants us to shake up the world, and just by us appearing like this, just like all of a sudden these bad guys appeared and they all got rid of in Israel. We're showing up everywhere. It's crazy. What are we doing here? Why am I here? Why are you, all of you came along with me? What are we doing here? It's nuts. It doesn't logically make any sense that we're here learning Torah, do this. We should be just doing whatever we did before we either met one of you guys. So in terms of shaking up the world, the whole point of Chabad is to go down and find people who are not Torah and Mitzvah and not shaking up the world, and wake them up and get their power joined into the whole neshama that we can make a change. So how do you, but where is this permissible? What is the halakha that allows Chabad and us later as possible emissaries to go out and hang out with people who are, when halakha says stay away.
Simcha, I could hear your question. Let me respond to it. 2 points. Number one, they made an investigation and a study, which would be called an empirical study in a university. And they found that the vast majority of Baalei Tshuva today, their journey started with a single mitzvah. And it could have been somebody asking them to put tefillin on, somebody asking them to light Shabbos candles. If you trace it all the way back, a Shabbos invite, it will go back to a single mitzvah. That's number one. Number two, you have a very valid point. I'll just tell you a story. The Frierdiker Rebbe was once in St. Petersburg, and he had to go there in order to speak to a goy who was very friendly with a minister who was a Soine Yisrael. Now, this guy was the minister's mentor. And the Frierdiker Rebbe knew that if he would be able to speak to his mentor, he may be able to change his position, the minister's position on about pogroms and other things. But in that particular area in St. Petersburg, no Jews were allowed to live. So the Frierdiker Rebbe had to stay in what we call in England a pub, I don't know what we say in America.
A bar?
A bar. He had to stay in a bar for Shabbos. And the Rebbe, when recounting the story, says, as the Rebbe had ongetan a pelts, the Rebbe wore a fur coat. And that enabled him to stay in the bar over Shabbos with Shikar Goyim for 24 hours. And on Friday night, he walked over to the Goy's house. He spoke to him. And this Goy, who was the mentor of the minister, had a tremendous effect on him. And he managed to avert some terrible decree. The Rebbe spoke about this story and asked, why was it necessary for the Frierdiker Rebbe to mention the fact that he was wearing a fur coat? After all, it was St. Petersburg. It was winter. It's freezing cold. What should he wear? A short sleeve shirt. That's what most people wear in a freezing cold climate. So the Rebbe said that even if it's necessary, and it was necessary to spend Shabbos in a bar, nevertheless, one should take precautions not to be influenced. That's why the Frierdiker Rebbe wore a fur coat, not just physically to stay warm, but also spiritually. And the only heter, if you're looking for a heter in halacha, is a din in melicha, which you have learned. Have you learned, Rabbi Willem, did you learn melicha yet with everybody?
Rabbi Dubov, you're showing your age. Melicha was taken out. I was the last one that took Melicha out. Melicha's out of this. You're showing that you're from the times of Noach and the Teva.
I apologize. I took Smicha by Rabbi Hirschsprung in Montreal. Which, by the way, since this is Achsidische Verbringen, I'll tell you a story about Rabbi Hirschsprung. The first time I ever met him, he was a Talmud of Lublin, and he had a photographic memory. It was something awesome to see. First time I ever met him, he was very friendly with the Bachurim. So I walked into the Zal, into the Beis HaMedrash in Montreal. I walked over to him. I said, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Hirschsprung. He said, Aleichem Shalom. He said, Wie heißt du? What's your name? I said, Dubov. He said, from Van Kimster. Where you come from? I said, Manchester, which is where I was born. So he went, Ach, welche Blatt in Shas? He says, which page in Shas? In other words, I'm not interested where you geographically come from, which page in Shas you come from. So I said, Gitin daf lamed vav. And he rattled the whole blatt off from top to bottom. I said, Oi, ich ha gemacht a tois, I made a mistake. Zvachin daf tzadik zadat. So he said, he smiled, he rattled the whole thing up. And he says, at Vesleinen, he says, when I was 15, I was Baki Baal Peh and Shuvas of Chassam Sofer. So then, anyway, then I realized I was in the wrong place. Anyway, Rabbi Isaac Shvei, Oliver Shalom. Isaac Shvei was also, we got Smicha from him, Rabbi Handel, and Rabbi Hirschman. Rabbi Isaac Shvei came in once, and he says, you're Bachurim, you're taking Smicha, and you're learning Melicha. Let me ask you, I just came from the old age home, and they told me they've all got high blood pressure because of the salt in the meat. So how can we kasher meat without salting it? He said, you're Smicha Bachurim, Ten lechachem v'yach kamoid. Anyway, so me with my English brain, I was thinking, how does salting work? It works by the process of osmosis. If you place a concentration of sodium chlorine on one side of a membrane, then in order to create an equilibrium, it pulls out the blood in order to equalize the amount of sodium chloride on each side of the membrane. So I thought that perhaps something else will do the trick. So I thought, what about sugar? Sugar will do the job.
Believe it or not, the dark age sugar brings an opinion there again.
1 second. I wasn't thinking about diabetes, by the way. That wasn't in my thing. That was also a problem. So what about sugar? Anyway, so for the next 2 weeks, I wrote an 8-page pilpul on salting meat with sugar. Agav, there's a very fascinating din, whether on the night of Rosh Hashanah, whether we should dip the challah also in salt. The Rebbe would take a piece of challah and dip it in salt in addition to the honey. However, the Tzemach Tzedek brings that honey and sugar has the same din. There is a tshuva that says, Yesh beis minei melach, melach mosoik and melach mar, which means salt and sugar, and you can be yotze dipping the bread in sugar if you haven't got any salt. There's a darkei tshuva, there's a tubtam, but that anyway, I wrote an 8-page pilpul on it. I was very, very proud of myself. Anyway, 2 weeks later, who comes in the base of Medrash? Rabbi Hirschsprung. So I thought to myself, he can't know everything. Not shaykh. So I go over to him, I said, Rabbi Hirschsprung, sag mir, was weißt du wegen Salz und Fleisch mit Zucker? What do you know about salting wheat and sugar? Ach, he says, alte Scheile, an old Scheile. And he rattles off every single thing that I'd written in my pilpul and more. And as he was doing it, I was having like a computer download of my yeshus, and he made a little kanedel, and I put it in the Beis HaKisei and gemachen asher yotzar, and that was the end of me. And he looked at me at the end, and he says to me, are you feeling okay? I said, yeah, Baruch Hashem. He says, Tumara Tevi, he gives me the keys, and it was Montreal, it was very snowy. He says, run down to my car and bring me my galoshin. The galoshin like the rubbers on, because he didn't want to get his shoes wet from the snow. And I remember as a bacha running down those steps, thinking to myself, in Wimbledon, we would say, this guy just beat me game, set, and match. He put me mamish in exactly where I belong in the world of knowing nothing. And what shaykhs can I have with Rabbi Hirschsprung? The answer is, I can bring him his galoshin. It's simple. That's what I can do. And then I realized that's the same thing with the Rabbeinu Shalom. We think Rabbeinu Shalom, we're doing him a big favor, Shakil and Lulav and Es and Das and Yetz. He says, you want to do merit, do this mitzvah, do this. The kleiner mitzvah, they're not so small. So in coming back to the din of Melicha, there's a din in Hilchas Melicha which says, the l'chayre, if the salt is pulling out the blood, why doesn't the blood go back in? Says the Gemara, I did the torid lemiflat loibola. Whilst the salt is pulling out the blood, whilst it's doing it, it doesn't go back in. So the Rebbe says the same thing as with shlichus. If you are being mashpia, Kolzman, you're being mashpia, you're not being mushpa. If you're going out and you're not being mashpia, then Oda Medini, who the Rambam writes in Hilchos Deis, a person is a social creature. And that is why it's absolutely necessary for the shluchim, such as myself, to be constantly connected to the Rebbe, because then we will be constantly being mashpia. Now, I'm not just saying as a shliach, but I would say any younger man or any bacha that goes on Mivtzaim, it's exactly the same. Depends on their kavanah. And just by the way, I wouldn't get too taken away with the term Rishoim. Yesterday we had in the Chabad house 150 Jews, most of whom that was their one-day experience of Sukkot. Either sitting in the Sukkah, all of them shuk lalav and esrog. They sat in the Sukkah and made a bracha. That was it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. But you should only know what that one mitzvah can do. As I said beforehand, ask any of the Bali Teshuvah that you know how they started their journey. And you'll probably find, if you trace it all the way back, it was that one mitzvah.
Rabbi, I didn't ask the full question because it was too personal, but you just answered with the Malika exactly how it works and how I personally have to perform.
Yes, Shikaya.
Very good.
That's it. Anybody else want to ask? Yeah.
Rabbi, if I can have a quick question.
Yeah, Henech, you want to put on your mic or your camera, or you don't want to be seen?
No, my phone's upside down. That's all.
Rabbi Isai, Henech, by the way, Henech should take this very personal. Look at that man with the long black beard. That man with the long black beard was in the Israel army for a couple of months. How long were you there?
6 months.
6 months, this past year. With the
I'm going back next week.
And he's going back next week with that long black beard, no?
My question is, so somebody approached me in shul. They forgot to do a Erev Tavshilin, and I went through a whole, research about what the Alter Rebbe says about it and everything. The one thing that I wasn't able to look up yet was Okay, so the food, there's all the all the things. But what about Shabbos candles? How, even if they have the light, right? They didn't make it of tafshilin. How can they light Shabbos candles, or she can't?
First of all, the Rav.
The nusach for the Erev Tavshilin says uladluke shraga. That's part
the
of
Rav
the
is the Rav. First of all, the Rav is mezaka kol adorim be'irazos, so that's not a problem. Yeah. Where does this person live in where does this person? Good, sir. The Rabbi Osderberg, Rabbi Brown has given the ganze killer. Now they haven't got a flame. They should go and borrow from a next door neighbor.
They have a flame. So if you're saying
Adlukashaga is they can, yeah, of course they can. They can rely on the Rav's Eruv. What is a Eruv? What is the technicality of an Eruv? An Eruv is a hecker. In other words, you're not allowed to light. You're not allowed to prepare one day for the next. Right. So if I'm preparing on Friday for Shabbos, I will remember that I am allowed to prepare from one day to the next. Therefore, I need a hecker. I need something to remind me that you're actually not allowed to do that. So what is the hecker? The hecker is the Eruv. I made the Eruv on Erev Yontiv, which we will do for the third time this year. And through that's my hecker, that in general you can't prepare for Yontiv one day for the next, or from Yontiv to Shabbos. But this year is different because I have to. Yeah?
Yeah.
Just by the way, a person should be mitzaref. You usually make an erev with 2 matzahs and a piece of fish or an egg or another tavshil, but one should be mitzaref the matzahs for Lecha Mishnah on Friday night.
And Shabbos.
Yeah. And eat the tavshil as well. In other words, it's not ma'akiv if one doesn't, but one should do that. Because since one's done a mitzvah with one thing, one should do the weiter mitzvah. It's an interesting shaila. What happens if somebody goes and eats the matzahs before Shabbos?
Friday night davka, or
for those who eat Shabbos Shudas, actually it should be eaten with Shabbos Shudas.
Well, the tavshil.
Or the challah, whatever. Something should be eaten for Shabbos Shudas. Because you want to extend it, you're giving it to the... That's the Rebbe. There's a whole sikh from the Rebbe about that. Anybody else?
the Rebbe writes in Shulchan Aruch.
Right.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. At the beginning, Rabbi Dubov, you mentioned about how your Rebbe.
Aaron, by the way, by him it's I think past midnight. Give him a break. Let's make it.
Say this.
Okay.
11:51.
Okay, so you mentioned that your Rebbitzin gives out 3-day candles. And I was wondering why wouldn't 2-day candles be sufficient? And in that you light them just before or shortly after the first day Yom Tov comes in. By Shabbos, it's only been approximately 48 hours. They usually have a little buffer in the candles to light for Friday night. Is there an inyan to davka light from a pre-existing flame for the Havdalah candle or something?
No, it's just I'm sorry, I was not medayik. It's just that's what they were selling in the stores. They have this Ner Mitzvah 3-day candle. You're right. Why should it be 3 days? As long as it's as long as it goes on.
Because it's made in China and it doesn't last. It's made in China. They don't last.
No, but it has the Ner Mitzvah stempel.
Yeah, you've got to
one
put it in the freezer.
One thing I wasn't sure of, perhaps I can ask everybody on this forum. Matzah Yom Kippur, that we use the Ner Shabbos, which was the candle in the. Do you just make the bracha boirei meirei hoish looking at that candle, or should you take a Havdalah candle?
But you need to have boirei meirei. You need to have a avukah.
So do you take? That's what I'm saying. Do you take a Havdalah candle and light from there?
I thought about it. It happens to be. I thought about, but you need an avukah for Havdalah. You need an avukah. So either
I know that. On the other hand, it says that you should make the bracha on the Ner Shabbos. So I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what to do. I think from what I remember, you don't. You just made the bracha on the candle.
It could be lit from the Ner Shabbos. It has to be lit from the.
So should one or can one just lechatchila make the boyer mereish on that yortzeit licht?
With the second candle, he's saying, with the second candle.
No, without second candle.
But again, it's not an avuka.
Avuka.
Oh, so that's what I'm asking you. Do you have to have that avuka?
Yeah. The Sabens left. Oh yeah, I wanted to give them a chance. They were. Oh, Saben. You see the Shimon and Saben, the father and son. They're the sweetest two people from the whole France. You want to say something of Shimon? Moshe. No.
Thank you very much for the shiur. This was very interesting. Thank you very much.
Rabbi Dubov, you see, you even have one of your mispalulim. But you see, Pinchas is on.
I can see Pinchas. He's in Japan though.
I don't
He's
know.
on
He's
the
about.
boat. I'm surprised he's up.
No, I made a mistake. I thought it was at 5:30 in UK, so it was around
okay.
during the night. So with the jet lag, it would be quite difficult.
All
but
good, Pinchas. Pinchas, all good.
look at yeah, all good, all good.
Okay, thank you again, Rabbi Dubov. Thank you very, very, very much. It was very geschmack. And thank you, everybody, for joining. And remember, this is the time of Sitzen and Leinen. And right after Yom Tov, we're back to bigger and better. Kol Tov, Besuras Toivus, everybody. Shkoyach.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.